So we're going to continue digging into recreating pan delays and circular delays from the original Lexicon PCM70. In the last video, I showed you the algorithmic flow chart, but I skipped over one specific thing in the PCM70 because I wanted to leave it for this video. And that's the diffusion control that you see in that feedback loop of the delay algorithm. I think the easiest way to think of diffusion, especially in this context, is just to think of it as a cluster of delays that are used to soften or smear the sound of whatever you're putting through it. So first, we're going to look at what the diffusion's doing in the PCM70, and then we're going to see if we can recreate that sound using the LX480. So this top line here, that's the diffusion in circular delays at the default setting. It's adding almost 70 milliseconds to that tap. You're not going to hear that whole 70 milliseconds due to masking, but you can really see how that can soften any transient going through it. So in circular delays, these 3 taps happen, feeds back through, goes back through the diffusion again, and that's what makes them sound like they get softer and softer and more smear fading off into the background. Now, unfortunately, the taps in the twin delays algorithm don't have a diffusion control, and yes, I've already made a feature request, but the taps in the early reflections of the reverb algorithms do. But unfortunately, the reverb level is before the diffusion, so we can't just turn off the reverb level and get the diffused taps of the delay. So we had to get a little creative. Luckily, I was able to jump on a call with Martin from Relab, and he gave me a setting that made the reverb inaudible. And then my next step was to match the sound of this diffusion, and that's controlled by the size control and the diffusion percentage. And saw that size 33 with a diffusion setting of about 65% most closely resembled the diffusion that we saw on the PCM70. Now, my next challenge was getting the sound of this diffusion into the feedback loop of the delay. So I create a dual engine setup in series, and I put the diffused tap at 0 milliseconds just to diffuse the input. And then I set this first delay at 888 milliseconds, now diffused. And then I send that to a second instance of the LX480 with the left and right taps. And then I go back to the original delay and feed it back on itself. So each time this loops through, you get the diffused delay going into the 2 taps. And then this is going to feed back, diffuse it again, and then go back to those 2 taps, just like the PCM70. And listen to how these echoes now melt off into the background. Admittedly, we're getting a little complex with the routing and we're going a little deep here, but now that I've broken out that feedback, think of the creative possibilities I opened up. I can add saturation, I could have bit crushers, I could add a pitch shifter, rather than always chasing that next one-trick pony of the next game changer plugin. Hopefully, I'm encouraging you to dig a little deeper, push the creative possibilities of the plugins that you already have in your arsenal, and start making some really creative discoveries. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.